Hello, you are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 9th, 2025. A huge number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. There is a lot of information coming from the line of contact. Once again, fighting has resumed for Kotlin. This time, a new unit is counterattacking Russian army positions. There are some interesting updates, so let's go over everything in order. Before we begin, I would sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. Let's start with the Sumy and Belgorod directions, where we are receiving a large number of geolocations. As you can see, there are some posts and various pieces of information. And of course, the most important and interesting thing today is Sirsky's address, which confirmed Zelensky's earlier statement that, as of these days, as of April 9th, the Russian army has launched the offensive that Zelensky had previously announced. That is, the Russian side has begun a large-scale offensive in the areas of Sumy, Kharkiv, and possibly Chernihiv. It's possible that Sirsky made this statement to justify Zelensky's words about April, or perhaps to justify the announced and required mobilization, namely the need to recruit 30,000 people monthly to keep the front line stable. All of this was discussed recently in an interview with Ukraine's Commander-in-Chief Sirsky. If we talk about the situation on the ground, yes, Russian units are reportedly advancing. For example, in the area near the settlement of Veselovka, footage from Objective Control was published, showing how Russian FPV drone operators destroyed Ukrainian military equipment, which appeared to be in the process of being evacuated. Or perhaps the Russian side also had no way of evacuating it, as this seems to be a grey zone with drones flying from both sides, so the Russian side decided to destroy the equipment. In the area of the settlement of Basovka, some independent cartographers are updating the maps. According to neutral sources, over the past 24 hours, Russian units have expanded their control zone between the settlements of Lochnia and Basovka and have come right up to the N07 supply route, which leads toward the Kursk region and the Sudzha border area. Let me remind you that on the territory of the Kursk region and the Sudzha district, there's still one settlement near the N07 route, the village of Oleshnya, where fighting is still ongoing. For the third or fourth day in a row, we've been receiving reports of fierce clashes, strong resistance, and determined assaults. But so far, neither side has reported any clear success. This likely means the turning point has not yet come, and the Ukrainian side is trying to hold their positions as long as possible. For the Russian side, it's crucial to clear this area before a possible ceasefire around April 20th or the May holidays. That's why fighting here continues, and given that the Russian army has reached the N07 route, there's a high probability that in the coming day or within the next few nights, Ukrainian forces may decide to withdraw from Oleshnya due to the risk of encirclement. Fighting also continues in the Huevo area. Yesterday, the North Group of Russian forces reported that a decisive assault on the village of Hornal was underway. Very intense fighting continues, with fierce resistance from the Ukrainian armed forces. However, there have not yet been any map updates confirming the presence of Russian units on the outskirts of the settlement. Today, new information is coming from various neutral sources that there is indeed gradual progress by Russian forces toward the fields and forest belts between Huevo and Hornal. Now let's move on to the Belgorod direction. Today, reports have emerged that Ukrainian armed forces have left the settlements of Popovka and Demidovka. This information comes from neutral cartographers, though there's a slight difference regarding Demidovka. As of the morning of April 9th, Ukrainians were pushed out, and the Russian army had fully cleared the settlement. As for Popovka, Ukrainian units retreated southward toward water barriers near the state border. However, as of the morning of April 9th, Russian units had not yet entered the southern part. It's possible the area was cleared later today, or perhaps tomorrow the Ministry of Defense and the official North Group channel will confirm it. Either way, the most important point is that as of now, there are no Ukrainian formations remaining in any settlement on the territory of the Belgorod region. We can't say with 100% certainty that these areas have been fully cleared by Russian forces yet, but this process is actively underway. Also, there's been an increase in footage showing strikes on Ukrainian positions deeper inside Ukrainian territory, particularly in the area of Malorybitsia, again in Sumy region. Here we can see a destroyed tank hit by a Russian FPV drone. Slightly further south, near the village of Pokrovsk, there is footage of a Lancet drone strike on a Ukrainian T-72 tank along a road leading toward Belgorod region, in the direction of the village of Kolotilovka. Gradually, the footage of combat is shifting deeper into Sumy region, which also seems to indicate the beginning of an offensive on this part of the front. And as you can see, today we've received a huge number of geolocations from the Kharkiv region. I'd like to take a closer look at this sector of the front. Today we've seen many videos from this direction, including footage of multiple launch rocket system strikes and a large number of drone strike recordings. Also, overnight between April 8th and 9th, 2025, footage and reports appeared of mass drone strikes on the city of Kharkiv. According to sources, the strikes targeted military infrastructure, possibly production facilities or warehouses. In general, there is an increase in intensity and activity of combat operations in this area. The most interesting news today comes from the direction of Volchansk. Today, some pro-Russian channels reported that the armed forces of the Russian Federation had crossed the Vovcha River and managed to gain a foothold on the western side, that is, south of the Vovcha River, essentially on the Ukrainian side, specifically in the western part of Volchansk. This information was published, and there were also reports online today suggesting that a flag may have even been raised. However, as of the evening of April 9th, no objective control footage confirming this had been published. So we are keeping this information in mind, observing and monitoring the situation. But overall, the increased activity in the Kharkiv direction, especially in Volchansk, fits into the general logic and aligns with Sirsky's statement about the beginning of the Russian offensive in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Now, if we speak specifically about the Kharkiv direction and the settlement of Volchansk itself, it appears the goal of the offensive in this sector is to clear the city of Volchansk and to begin advancing toward the Oskil River. This pocket of territory, located between the Pechenihy Reservoir and the Oskil River, is the one that the Russian side will likely attempt to collapse in the near future. All the necessary conditions seem to be in place. Regarding the northern Kupiansk direction, over the past 24 hours, there have been no videos confirming any changes to the front line. However, there has been a large number of artillery strikes and drone strikes on Ukrainian forward positions in this sector. Next, we move toward the central Kupiansk direction, as well as the Lyman direction, where the Russian army is indeed conducting an offensive. Combat is taking place along the entire line of contact here, starting from the settlements of Zaporizhia and Katarinivka. The pace of the offensive varies across different sectors, and accordingly, the rate of Russian advancement differs. Probably the most interesting and important news today comes from the settlement of Nadia, where Russian forces have been trying, for the second or even third week, to regain control over areas lost during the Ukrainian counter-offensive carried out by the 3rd Assault Brigade. So we see that the offensive and the pace of Russian advances in this part of the front are also gaining momentum. There is increased activity and pressure from the Russian side here, as the northern flank appears to be somewhat behind schedule compared to the timing of the Russian offensive in the areas of Rydkodub, Katarinivka, and Nova. From there, new reports have brought updates to the front line. If we compare all directions, all front lines, and all settlements, at this moment, the Lyman direction shows the highest pace of the offensive. Here, the Russian army is advancing very rapidly and confidently, and we can see that the Ukrainian side has not yet been able to stabilize the front line. So let's go step by step. Let's first compare the maps over the last couple of days. This is the map as of the end of April 9th, 2025. Here's what we saw yesterday. You can see that on the flanks, along the perimeter, the lines were adjusted. The Russian army also created several new points of pressure in the area of these small villages: Rydkodub, Zelenaya Dolina, Lipov, and Nova. Let's start from the southern part of the village of Nova. Based on updates, we can see that the Russian army managed to enter the settlement in 3 different places. 2 of these entry points were confirmed and published by neutral cartographers. One entry point was confirmed through video footage published by Ukraine's 60th Mechanized Brigade, which is responsible for defending these settlements. Based on this footage, a small map update was made. This forest belt and a small ravine were marked as under Russian control, so we can see that the offensive is being carried out across a wide front. The advance is coming from a series of strongpoints that were previously under Ukrainian control but are now held by Russian forces. There is also information, mainly from pro-Russian experts and neutral cartographers, that the Russian armed forces managed to seize the last strongpoint located in the northern part of the village of Nova. Thus, a full semicircle of encirclement around the village has formed. The Russian army controls all approaches to the village, and Ukrainian forces are left with only one supply route, Road 05-26, which leads south from Novoe in the direction of Stavki and Lyman. To the west, there is a small water barrier, and of course, some logistical difficulties remain. We can see that combat operations here are approaching a certain final phase. Additionally, information is coming in that Russian units have managed to level the front line between the Zerobets River and the settlements of Novolyubivka, Novomikhailivka. This is the kind of update that cartographers are now showing. And today, April 9th, even pro-Ukrainian mapping services have made significant changes to their maps. And according to their maps, the situation here is even worse than the one shown on the map you're looking at now. According to pro-Ukrainian sources, everything that has already been marked in favor of the Russian Federation is now fully confirmed, and on top of that, a massive layer of grey zone and contested territory has been added. So overall, we can say that the situation around the villages of Novaya and Lipovo seems to be predetermined. And possibly within the next 24 hours, we may see a report from the Russian Ministry of Defense announcing another settlement taken by Russian forces, or perhaps footage with a Russian flag raised somewhere in the village center. We now move on to the Siversk sector of the front, which has also seen a lot of developments. Let's start with the village of Torske. This is now the fourth day in a row that we're receiving reports about the steady advance of Russian troops within the settlement. According to pro-Russian experts, as of today, approximately 80% of Torske is under the control of Russian forces. The Russian army continues its clearing operations at full pace, pushing into the southern outskirts of the village. And once Torske is fully under Russian control, the focus will likely shift toward the villages of Zarechne and Yampilivka. This, in turn, would mark the beginning of the third battle for the town of Lyman. So far, there haven't been any objective control visuals confirming this progress. However, there are reports that Russian units have broken through Ukrainian defenses toward the village of Hryhorivka. Neutral cartographers have updated their maps to reflect this adjustment. And here too, the pace of the Russian advance is gradually increasing. By the evening of April 7th, the map looked like this. By the end of April 8th, Russian forces had conducted several successful offensive operations, which led to a partial collapse of Ukrainian defensive lines in this sector. And as of April 9th, reports indicate that the distance between Russian forward positions and Hryhorivka has decreased to approximately 2 kilometers. So we may be just a day or two away from seeing this village also marked under Russian control. Next, we move to the Toretsk and Chasiv Yar sectors. Regarding Chasiv Yar, over the past 24 hours, we've seen a significant amount of footage showing Russian artillery strikes and drone operations. It appears that the Russian army is finishing its regrouping efforts before launching a full-scale assault toward the town of Kostiantynivka. At the moment, they are targeting Ukrainian frontline positions, destroying supply depots, temporary deployment areas, and hunting down FPV drone operator positions. As for Toretsk, we're also receiving a number of notable updates. Let's begin with the area along the Siversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Today, Ukrainian sources have significantly updated their maps. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, pro-Ukrainian cartographic services have massively expanded the grey zone in this region. The entire area between the village of Dylivka and the canal is now considered contested or under the fog of war by Ukrainian sources. This suggests that Russian units have already been spotted operating in this part of the front. Most likely, clashes are ongoing here for control and initiative. It seems that Russian forces are attempting to clear this pocket, straighten the front line, and move closer to the village of Dylivka. We're also seeing a growing number of geolocated videos showing Russian FPV drone operations and artillery strikes targeting Ukrainian forward positions, depots, and mortar crews. This indicates that the offensive is gaining momentum, and Ukrainian defenses in this area appear to be weakening. These particular images were published today by the Ukrainian armed forces, showing explosives being dropped on Russian positions on the Terrakon spoil heap. This confirms that Russian forces have full control over that elevated area. This raises questions and growing doubts about whether Ukrainian forces are still holding the western outskirts of the Zabalka district, as well as the fields south of the spoil heap. Considering that Russia has established a presence on this strategic high ground, there is a high probability that Ukrainian forces have already withdrawn from Zabalka, or will do so within the next 24 hours. In that case, we can expect new footage to emerge, which will allow for further map updates. Sources also confirm that Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups have reached the ventilation shafts and mine infrastructure located just north of Toretsk. These positions were confirmed yesterday through published objective control footage showing Russian troops in this area, and today additional expert confirmations point to continued Russian advances here. So what we're seeing is a gradual expansion of combat operations beyond Toretsk, with fighting now reaching the outskirts of Sherebinivka, Klebanbek, Katarinivka, and of course Kostiantynivka itself. But perhaps the most significant updates from this part of the front come from the area around the settlement of Kalinova. Remember that back in early 2024, after the fall of Ocheretine and the beginning of the Pokrovsk offensive, Russian forces secured positions north of Ocheretine, dug in, and then the offensive stalled for almost a year. Everyone was expecting a renewed Russian push northward, but the direction remained largely inactive. Now, however, pro-Ukrainian cartographers are showing a significant shift on this part of the front, effectively a small revolution in terms of map changes, marking new Russian gains. According to Ukrainian sources, over the past 24 hours, Russian forces have moved up close to Kalinove, and according to the map of strongpoints, heavy fighting is underway for a company-level fortified position just south of the village. If this position falls, Russian forces are likely to continue their push to clear the rest of Kalinov. This broader offensive also aligns with ongoing Russian movements around the settlements of Oleksandrivka, Rozivka, and Panteleimonivka. In this sector, Russian artillery continues to engage Ukrainian positions toward the direction of Valentinivka. So we can see that this part of the front is also becoming more active, and it's likely that in the near future we'll start receiving more and more geolocated footage from this area as well. There are also growing suggestions that, with the intensified fighting north of Toretsk, the goal may be to cut off Ukrainian supply routes running through the Klebanbek reservoir, which would make it easier for Russian forces to advance along the southern edge of this pocket. We now move on to the Pokrovsk section of the front. We had previously concluded that the battle for this pocket had effectively come to an end. The Russian army managed to repel all Ukrainian attacks, stabilize the front line, and regain control over previously lost positions. However, today, pro-Ukrainian sources began publishing new footage that may indicate Ukrainian forces have once again regained control over the village of Kotline and pushed Russian units back from the railway area between Udakne and Kotline itself. This claim is currently supported by two independent sources. Here is the map published today by the pro-Ukrainian Deep State Service. According to them, during a Ukrainian counterattack, their forces managed to take full control of Kotlin as well as the railway line running alongside it. This would represent a significant advance and a major shift on the map. Just yesterday, we had seen footage showing strikes on Russian frontline positions in this industrial area, and now, less than 24 hours later, we're receiving reports that Ukrainian forces have forced the Russian army to retreat from this very same area. Moreover, footage has emerged showing the actions of Ukraine's 8th Special Purpose Regiment. It appears that they were just recently redeployed to this area, along with the 152nd Brigade. According to reports, these units conducted clearing operations in Kotlin and carried out a series of counterattacks. A lengthy video has also been released, showcasing the work of Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, and one geolocation in particular confirms activity in this exact area, where the clearing operation was taking place. However, given that these special forces fall under the influence of Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, And considering that this mapping service is also believed to be under their control, it's quite possible that this operation involved a mix of combat activity and narrative shaping. In other words, some details may be exaggerated or selectively presented, so we recommend waiting a bit longer before making any adjustments to the maps. While we acknowledge these reports from the Ukrainian side, we are not yet making any definitive updates because there are still many unanswered questions about the timeline and scale of the operation, especially whether Ukrainian forces truly managed to retake the entire railway and the village of Kotlin. For now, we'll hold off. Next, we move to the southern Donetsk direction. There is a small geolocation update near the village of Andriivka. This footage shows a Ukrainian drone strike on Russian sabotage groups positioned along forest strips in this area. Based on these visuals, we have marked this disputed territory in favor of the Russian Federation. Just a small map correction. Regarding this section of the front, today we received only one piece of information from very reliable pro-Russian sources, indicating a new advance from the direction of Dnipro-Enahaya and Fedorivka toward the village of Otradna. According to these sources, Russian forces broke through Ukrainian defenses here. The breakthrough reportedly extends about 1.5 kilometers deep and approximately 2 kilometers wide. If we use this information as a reference, it appears the Russian army began advancing along this route. This is where the reported breach occurred, and according to the sources, Russian troops are now pushing toward Otradne, more specifically, toward the H-15 highway, in an attempt to cut off Ukrainian units stationed in Bohatyr and Alexeyevka from their supply routes. It's likely we'll soon receive more reports from this area, which could provide further confirmation and allow for new map updates. Now we turn to the Zaporizhia section of the front. There's been increased activity here. However, following Russia's initial gains, Ukrainian command appears to have reinforced this area with additional troops. As a result, the front line seems to have stabilized. For the past 5 or 6 days, we haven't received any credible updates suggesting further Russian advancement in this sector. Only isolated videos and FPV drone strike footage have been published. However, it's worth noting that more and more objective control footage is now coming directly from the town of Kharkiv. A swarm of Russian drones is currently operating over the town, targeting vehicles, positions, communication relays, and other equipment. It appears the Russian army may be preparing for an assault in the direction of Kharkiv, possibly via Novoandriivka, and this offensive could begin very soon, potentially at any moment. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and take care.